Hi, everyone. Dom Famulaharam, Mapex All Access Live. This is so great to have everyone back again for Mapex and all the different artists that we have been able to feature. And today, I just love this guy because he's so knowledgeable in so many areas of the music business. And as a musician and as a player, as a drummer, he is so well versed in all areas of drumming and all avenues of the music industry. So I want you all to please welcome the great Mr. Russ Miller.
What's up, Dom? Hey, everybody.
Russ, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, we're in your studio here, which is absolutely gorgeous. Just tell me about that studio.
This is a new studio. I've been in here for 1 year, actually. And this is one of the main tracking rooms. It's about 30 by 25 with like 15-foot ceilings, I think. And I keep this kit here all the time. And this one doesn't move. I have a few others that are exactly the same that go out on the road and whatnot. And then this one lives here, and this is where I work most of the time. So yeah, in here a lot.
So in that studio, I mean, the studio is fully functional on many different levels, correct?
It is, yeah. This facility is it's for Hitcore, which is the new online events company I'm involved with. Yeah. And then, of course, my production company of doing music for film and TV, and then all the stuff that I do. And yeah, it's a full world-class studio. You know, we have 4 rooms and a control room and 3 tracking rooms. And then there's a sound stage. The whole thing's 18,000 square feet, but there's a big sound stage with a huge, production in there that we're doing. We do everything in there, from concerts to fashion shows to comedians to everything. It's a new business that's coming in June, actually. We've been working on it for like 4 years.
Well, this is amazing, Russ. And what you've got, aside from the intensity in the drumming industry and what you're doing as far as playing and tracking and whether you're touring or whether you're in the studio laying down tracks for different television shows or movies or whatever.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, you're doing some engineering.
Yeah.
And some producing.
Yeah.
And running this industry.
I told you that the success of my career is 2 things, Dom. It's the faith in God that it can happen, and my intense stupidity. Those 2 things combined I'm just dumb enough to think I can do all these things. And it all has come together. So
it is all coming together. I think what's amazing about it is that I am so impressed with all that you're doing. Even Russ, when we worked together for Drum Together, which was the come together tune that Randy Wallman arranged, you mixed it all down, 168 musicians, and which in itself was completely way above and beyond my comprehension. We have so far raised over $700,000.
That's awesome.
From that project to feed people from 20 countries through whyhunger.org. So your effort in doing that was above and beyond the call of duty to make that happen. But you had to mix over 100 drummers and then violins and vocalists and guitar and bass. Yeah. How were you able to take that step by step and make that happen?
Mostly stupidity, like I said. You could be relatively fearless jumping into that. It was a big job. I mean, I feel super blessed by it and what it's done for, feeding all those people. That amount of money is astonishing. That's incredible. And, it was really fun. What was really cool is, you and I talk a lot. We're close friends, but there's a lot of those guys. I know almost every single person that played on there. So there was a little bit of interaction. It was fun to talk to everybody and see how they did things, because I was seeing a lot of the raw footage. I do have a lot of blackmail footage that I have off to the side that was not used, but no, it was a lot of stuff. And, I have a team here that helped me. Jeff Hooker, who was working as a second audio engineer, was helping me do a lot of the editing and cleaning up things and lining things up. And it was a lot of work. It was a tremendous amount. Mixing the band itself was already a big job, but that paled in comparison to getting all those drums to come together and to use that term, but
literally come together. Over 100 drummers all performing either all of the chart or a part of the chart, and you pulling out sections of what can be used. And you musically made this work so fluid and so great in just the order of how you put this together. So that in itself. So where do you think that skill came from as far as engineering and hearing all that? Where'd that come from?
Well, what's so funny, because Greg and I, Bissonette, we played the bed track. We went in, we were the first ones to play it. So Greg and I went in and played the song down, and then we literally, top to bottom, and then we literally sat there. And it's funny because when we were doing it, Greg and I were talking about, there's a little bit of a lot of things, like a little bit of drum corps marching band, because there was a little bit of like figuring out, okay, if I play this, then you can play this layered on top of it, and then we'll leave this space, and this guy can come in and play this. And it was almost like orchestrating percussion parts I used to write for the percussion section when I was in high school, and then I marched with the Canton Bluecoats drum corps. So we would work on how you played with all these other drummers, and how you layered things together, and things, and like that came into it later on, years later, when I did that Arrival record where I was playing with me and Gad were playing together, and JR and Akira Jimbo, and we did that whole thing. That was a similar thing where we were layering and interlacing parts together. Yeah, there's one of them there. That's a Brazilian trio one. But anyway, long story short, there was a lot to it. It was certainly just playing the tune, and then a part of the movie thing too, where, when you do TV and movie stuff, you can't characterize things as much as you can when you're doing a record. Right? It's like, hey, this is my vibe, and this is the way it's going to be, and I want the feel to be here, and I want to super lay it back, and I want to do, there's a lot of things that are coming at those movie soundtracks that might be layered with a click, percussion, strings, orchestras, choirs. You have to lay things in the center of time a little bit more. So we had to think like that, because we didn't want to, at the very beginning, be the first guys to lay down the super laid back pocket or super ahead pocket. Then everybody had to deal with that.
Right.
It was like we had to, all those things come into play where you start to think all those experiences. And that's why we always say, like, playing as much as you can and operating in all these different experiences really are so important. That's why my fear for the generation now, is where they don't get to have all those experiences. It's so important because it all comes into play, even in the slightest degree, and something like that.
Well, it's pretty amazing. And this is why I like these kind of interviews, specifically with yourself, Russ, because I want this next generation to be able to understand the insane amount of hard work and the hours that it takes to take in this, even the concept of being able to engineer the drumming part for Come Together, as we did drum together. Even that alone took some serious, you had to step back and look at it from 35,000 feet and look down at this and say, listen, we're going to add a lot of musicians here. We got to know where to place everybody and where to put this.
Yeah, there's a lot of understanding about frequency, and that happens too, doing albums, understanding that the bass represents a certain range of frequencies, and how I tune the bass drum, or how I get the EQ on the bass drum to reside in that range. Right. I can affect that in a great way. There's a lot of other things that comes from doing a lot of recordings. And, I always talk a lot about, everything doesn't translate to a recording. Steve Gadd would always say to me, like, live, there's some excitement there that, like we would see the fill and you would go, man, that was a great fill, or what? Yeah, there was some excitement there. Like, hey, live, there's some, we're doing this crossover thing. There's something that has an aspect to it live that translates, but none of that's going to translate to tape. So it's all about understanding what actually works on tape. A lot of times there's a lot of frequency buildup too. Like if you play a lot of things very quick, especially on big drums, it builds up the frequencies and it doesn't translate and have clarity in recording. So there's a lot of those kind of things. It takes a lot of time to learn that. And I always say that the best engineers are musicians, because we know music, I know what these drums are supposed to sound like. So to EQ them or compress them or to gate them or whatever, I know what to do that won't affect the playing negatively, something that's going to make it better and sound better. So I always say the best engineers are musicians anyway.
Well, it definitely has proven itself in all the stuff that you've done, and how you've been a part of writing and performing and then producing and recording and engineering. There's so many different levels to it all. Just talk about, you mentioned Arrival. Just talk about Arrival. This project here blows me away on what you pulled off on this alone.
You were there. You were there at the one DVD shoot that we did. Remember that?
Absolutely.
I think it was like 10 years ago. But that Arrival, you know, I'm a sideman, right? I've been a sideman my whole career. I mean, I was in a couple, like when I was in the Psychedelic Furs, I was in the band, quote unquote. But most of the time, I'm a sideman, you know, with Andrea Bocelli or whoever.
Yeah.
And you know, Arrival for me was a chance back in the day for us to do something that we wanted to do. It started with me and Dave Garfield and Eric Marienthal and John Pena. We had that quartet, and we did that first album, and then we went and did a bunch of shows in Europe and stuff, and sort of it kind of got off the ground from that. And then I just decided that a part of my career was going to be keeping that little thing alive. It was an opportunity for me to do something expressive the way that I wanted to play. And to be honest with you, you know, it really helped this arc of my career, because I think a lot of people have to understand in the beginning, like, we just need a drummer, right? And then a little bit later, it's like, hey, we just need a really good drummer. And then it's like, hey, now we need like one of the world's best drummers. And then it turns into, now we need Dom Famulero, or now we need Russ Miller, or Steve Gadd, or Vinny Colaiuta, whoever it is. And there's these different arcs in that. Like, there's a lot of times where, you know, I would be in situations where, you know, they just needed a drummer. So shut your mouth and just play the music. Right. And then there's other times where they want you to say something, and you have to figure that out. But with Arrival, you know, it was an opportunity for me and for the guys in the band to, you know, have freedom to be ourselves, to do what we wanted to do. And if I had enough success as a sideman, it allowed me to finance that and keep that leg of that thing going. And it's been very successful. I mean, we've sold hundreds of thousands of albums, and it's done really, really well. We actually just filmed a new Blu-ray. We have a new double CD set coming out called Soul, Mind, and Body. And it's all covers that influenced me throughout my career, but done in really new, cool arrangements. And then we shot a new Blu-ray similar to the one you were at years ago. We shot a new one. Production's much better now, of course. And that one is going to come in a package in September. I think it's going to come out. So
the quality of the products, Russ, I got to say, it absolutely blows me away. Just talk about the Captain Kirk stuff that you had done.
Yeah. Kirk Covington is on our label. We've had that label for 20 some years. There's 16 people on the label. Giovanni, Hidalgo. I mean, there's a bunch of different people. We did some records together for that label as well. But Kirk is on the label, and he's had an unbelievable couple years, man. I mean, this is his 4th top 40 hit on radio. Right now, he's number 20 on the AC charts for the new single All the Way. We just shot the music video for that. And we've done a like live in session Blu-ray, a live in concert Blu-ray, the full album, and like 4 or 5 singles. All of them have been really, really well received on radio. I mean, for the label, it's been great too, because for RMI Records, it's, you know, we have 4 top 40 hits and a bunch of Grammy, you know, visibility, just all kinds of stuff going on. But he's killing it. I mean, I don't know how much harder you can kill it than what he is. I mean,
Kirk is fantastic. And this album with the horns on here and the whole thing, I mean, it just sounds so great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I mean, you know me. I mean, I drive the guys at Mapex nuts too. I mean, I don't like doing anything that's not excellent. I just don't think, I mean, my friend Dave Weckl always says that too. It's like, why do it if it's not going to be great? You know, and everything we do, I try to do at one notch above what you think. I mean, we've talked about that before. When I wrote for Modern Drummer in the articles, I had that one, I think Steve Smith and I did an interview together about it, but it was about giving 150%.
Yeah.
Like, if you give more than what's expected in everything, you will succeed, you will be asked back, you will be hired. If you only give what's expected, you have a 50-50 chance.
Right.
You know, if you don't give what's expected, you're done.
Right.
But I mean, in my generation of guys, my goal was to walk in the session and knock it through the frickin' wall, like the NFL, like where everyone's walking out going, he was unbelievable. Like I got to call this guy for everything. I mean, that's my goal. And if that doesn't happen, I consider it a failure on my behalf.
But I want that message to be heard, because that really is where the path of success lies. You've got to be willing to give more, and you've got to be willing to push yourself to that level. And that's kind of where wisdom comes in. Wisdom is the combination of knowledge and experience.
Right.
Knowledge alone does not make somebody wise, but
No.
putting that knowledge into action, that's where experience comes in. That's where wisdom lies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's case in point. I know guys with PhDs in music that couldn't get through the Cohen bar mitzvah if their life depended on it, you know. You know, and I know guys that never took a lesson in their life that are great musicians. I think the balance is in between, right? Because you don't want to limit yourself by not having knowledge about what we're doing, not being able to read, not being able to play different styles. I mean, look, if you get in a band and it skyrockets and it's great, you know, but you know the odds of that are slim. You have a better chance of confirming that you're going to be involved in the business by having knowledge and being effective and being able to do things. You know, that all being said, if you don't have experience doing it, like you said, you can have all the book learnings in the world. You know what I mean? It's really about, you know, doing a million gigs with all these different guys and understanding what it takes to execute music with different players. It's super duper important, you know, quickly having that ear to recognize, oh, this guy on bass, he doesn't play bass, he plays melodic bass, or this guy plays bass and is not going to have a lot of movement, or this guy plays behind or ahead or in the center, or, you know, this guy's a very aggressive pick sound or very aggressive thumb sound, you know, so I have to match that with the bass drum and the way that I play the drums. And, you know, Max Roach had a great, I spent some time with Max Roach, actually. I have some of his hi-hats that we use to design the Avidus series hi-hats, which these are the template hi-hats or the tuner hi-hats for the Avidus series from Zildjian that were based on some hi-hats I got from Max. And Max used to say, you know, a great drummer plays the drums into the key of the song so that we sound like we belong in that composition. And having that level of understanding of what's going on musically and having those Dumbo-sized elephant ears is developed over years and years and years of experience. It's just not something you can get by yourself in the room. Just not going to happen. You have to go do it, and that separates those players. You know.
Well, it really is so true, and I'm sure those cymbals sound fantastic. I had the chance of knowing Max for many, many years and taking some lessons with him, and he really was a philosopher and such a deep, deep person at so many different levels.
Yeah.
And the names that I want everyone to hear when they hear a name like Max Roach, go back and do the homework, do the research Max, watch some of the videos, listen to some of the albums, get to know these names, because these names have influenced generations of drummers, and they are still influencing us.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And, you know, a really good litmus test is to look at someone play and know a couple or three generations back how that guy ended up sounding like that. That, you know, Dennis Chambers, you know, Billy Cobham, you know, Elvin Jones, Tony Williams, Buddy Rich, those lineages leading to Dennis Chambers, right? And then you see the young gospel players that stemmed out of, you know, Will Kennedy, Dennis Chambers, a lot of those, Marvin McQuitty, a lot of those guys that developed that early sound of those things, or the great R&B drummers of today, you know, that were influenced by J.R. Robinson and Steve Gadd and Jeff Vaccaro and Clyde and Jabbo and James Gadsden and Ed Green and all, you know, all the study of what led to what. And I mean, I've spent a lot of time, you know, Steve Smith is a good friend of mine. He kicked my butt many years ago about being a great student, right? We have to be great. He's one of the best students I've ever met in my life. Yeah. He's an incredible student, and thus look at his playing level. But I mean, I try to be a great student to myself and other people, learning a lot of things and shutting up when I have to shut up and talk. You know. So.
You know, I've known Steve for over 40 years, and in those over 40 years, he has never ceased to amaze me, to continue to be a student of this art form and put the time in that it takes to study. There's one thing about saying you're a student, and there's something else about saying, I'm going to schedule the time every day to go and practice because I am a student.
Yeah. Yeah, and his development is ridiculous, you know, and we did all those camps years ago in Bavaria, Germany, together. I don't even know what years, late 90s maybe. We've known each other since the 80s, but I mean, we spent a lot of time, and I had so many experiences in my life with Jeff Hamilton and Adam Nussbaum and Max Roach and I mean all the time with Jim Chapin and guys like yourself. And I mean the times that I opened up for Elvin Jones doing clinic tours for Yamaha back in the day and spending time with Elvin every night. And I mean, it's invaluable, you know, and I think it's super important that all of us guys, you know that we have to pass information along. I wouldn't have it if they didn't do it to me. And I've been involved in education. I mean, you're certainly one of the top educators on the planet Earth in any field, let alone drums. But I mean, it's so important, and all the things, you know, the reach that you've had is incredible. I mean, I always laugh with Dom because no matter where I'm at in the world, Dom was just there the night before. I always tell you that. Like, Dom was just here last week. I'm like, I know. I could be in Madagascar in some village, you know, and they're like, hey, you know, Dom was just here. Yeah,
it's pretty crazy with all the traveling. And of course, this pandemic, by not traveling, you know, my wife has an Uber driver come up every day at my house and she's got a bag packed. And she said, didn't you go somewhere, anywhere around the world? So it's really at that point. But
I'm surprised you're still married. She's probably like, when are you leaving again? That's what he looks at me like, isn't it time for a tour or something?
Just talk about Giovanni Hidalgo and Pete Laka, two other phenomenal recordings that you have that you work with these legends. It's incredible.
Yeah, Gio, who I love dearly, he's amazing, and we did that record together in Miami at Criteria Historical Studio, Two Become One, it's called, and we talked about doing that for about a year. And Paul Quinn, who you know is my attorney, and he knows Gio, and we were sitting at dinner one night, I think at the NAMM show. You may have been there, I don't know. And Paul was like, you guys got to do this record and blah, blah, blah. So we ended up doing it at Criteria. It was super, super successful. We have number 32 on the Pop CHR chart for the remake of Things We Said Today, which is the Beatles. Great tune. And it's done very well. I mean, it was an incredible experience for him and I. Richie Bravo came and guested, and we played a tremendous amount of stuff. Rique Pantoja, who's a superstar in Brazil, he was a part of the band, and he wrote a lot of the pieces with me, and we put that whole album together. And the one with Pete, you know, Pete and I have been doing tons of stuff together over the years. And I was real. Steve Smith kind of got hip to this Southern Indian thing a couple years before I did, and of course he skyrockets off, and like we talked about. But you know, I ended up working. I you know, it's a great story because, you know, when I first heard Southern Indian music, like all of us that hear it, you're going, I have no idea what's happening. It's just like, what is happening? I know it's organized because all these people are playing at the same time, but I don't know what's going on. I can't hear one. I don't know what's going on. And, you know, that kind of kicked my butt. So I spent a bunch of time studying and working on that, not to the level of Steve, but doing the best I could. And I ended up working with Kavita Krishnamurti and Dr. L. Subramanian. Kavita is like the Barbra Streisand of India. So I went all over the world working with them, playing all this Indian music. And Pete and I started to do all these things together. And we ended up working on that Rhythm Sphere record, which is this sort of contemporary Indian thing with drum set, and conical, which is the vocal stuff. And, you know, I just, something intrigued me, and I just dug in and went for it. So what I love to do is to have something like that happen and then see it all the way through. We've talked before about, you got to finish, man. Everybody starts things. It's easy to start things, but finishing things, there's not that many people that finish things, and you got to see it through. I'm interested in Indian music. What can I do? Let me study it. Let me work on it. Let me get gigs with Indian musicians. Let me do recording. Let me see that through into a point where I feel like I really captivated what I was originally thinking and hearing with it, you know. And doing that with Afro-Cuban music, same thing. When I moved to Miami to go to University of Miami, I couldn't even spell Afro-Cuban. I mean, I grew up in Cleveland, man, like south of Cleveland. There's no, I mean, you know, the congas are like, we put plants in them. And, you know, I get to Miami, I couldn't get arrested. I couldn't get a $50 cruise ship gig because I couldn't play any of that stuff. So I valet parked, and I saved money, and I hired Hector Nesiasup, who's Alex Acuna's nephew.
Right.
And he would come and show me all this stuff. And then I ended up writing books about it and working with all the whole Gloria Estefan crew of Afro-Cuban guys in Miami, you know, just spending years doing all of those things with all those guys. And then, you know, there's another example of seeing that through, like doing those records with Geo and being a part of that community. And you know, it's that timeline, that lineage of let's do this, let's finish it. You know, let's go through and make something happen. Don't just start, man. Everybody can start. Everybody can start something, but few can finish it 100%.
I think what's interesting, Russ, is that what you're saying is just such an important part for people to listen to and take in and understand the depth of the breadth of what you're saying. So, I mean, this is so important to be able to open ourselves up to step into the unknown to certain degrees.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that. You know, you can't win the bet if you don't put any money on the table, right? Yeah. That's just simple as that. I know a lot of people that are like, oh, I wish I would have did this. I wish I would have did that. But like I tell my daughter, Josephine, all the time, I'm like, Joey, nobody stops you but you. Nobody. You're the only person that stops you. You can blame it on anything you want because excuses are always easier than answers. That's society, right? I got an excuse why this didn't happen. Now let's have an answer why it can happen. You know, and that's what I'm always telling my daughter, like, excuses are easier than answers. Just fix it. Get the answer, see it through, do it. Nobody can stop you but you. That's it. There's nobody else can stop you. And if you don't stop, you will win, right? If you stop, then you don't win. But if you don't stop, eventually you either die or you'll win.
Point well taken. Let's get into products, Russ. I mean, because you have such a span of concepts to all that you do that it's not just any one area. You've got products. Just talk about GrooveX for a brief moment. Then I want to get into the Verstrata snare, the Design Lab set you have right there. Then I want you to play a track. So just talk about GrooveX, which is a phenomenal product.
Well, thank you. I mean, all the products are necessity is the mother of invention. There's just no question about that. I mean, it's all stuff that just came up. Everything that I've done, all the signature products through the years with all the different companies. I have the ride cymbal coming out with Zildjian, the staccato ride. They sold it through the custom shop for a minute, and now it's coming out in the catalog this year, so it'll be available permanently. The X-Click and all the stuff from GrooveX, we have a bunch of products with that. All that is all the product. I mean, here's the X-Click on the snare drum. It's just the cross stick block. I mean, you regular cross stick here. Much louder, much more definition.
Beautiful.
Works great with recordings. Engineers love it because they don't have to ride the fader on the backbeat cross stick. I mean, some of these things I had out for years. They were different names or whatever. I've revamped them, redesigned things. This is a complete new design. And GrooveX is just my opportunity to, you know, get some of those things out into the market. Some of them disappeared out of the market, and I'm able to bring them back, or a version of it, or, you know, a new version of things. And, you know, I'm just trying to do that. And really, you know, I'm trying to do it like Vic did, or Remo, or Armand, or Robert Zildjian, you know, everybody that just, it was product first, right? Just artistry first. Let's make something great. Let's get something that is really well made, very well executed, and let's try to do it in a way that, you know, we can sell it and get it out there, which is great. But at the end of the day, the product has to be first and foremost. It's the same with the Verstrata stuff, all the Design Lab stuff. You know, I've been involved with the design at Mapex for I don't know how many years now. Joe Hibbs brought me in years ago, whenever that was. I want to say 2012-ish, 20 something like that. And you know, we've done a lot, man. I mean, Mapex is not even the same company from when it was. I mean, the product line right now is so far superior to anything that I've seen them put out. I mean, the Design Lab stuff is, and this is no BS, man. I own, and you know this, I own about 35, 36 drum kits. It's insane and it's stupid, and let's put that aside for a minute. But you know, I own Tamastar, and I own Sonar SQ2, and I mean Hendrix custom made, you know, stave, hand carved Bubinga. I mean, like all these amazing, ridiculous instruments, you know, and most of them I own because I was so interested in testing, A/Bing things and going, why does this have a vibe and a sound, and why does this one, and you know, all the great Yamaha stuff over the years, all back in the day, and you know, testing things. And I'm telling you, when we work through the design lab stuff, this stuff is as good, if not better, than every single instrument that I own. Nothing blows doors on it. Nothing. There's moments and other things that are great, but everything about this kit resides at that level. I just hope that people understand that about what Mapex tried to do and is doing with Design Lab, and then bringing that information down that we learned to Saturn Evolution, and then the new Saturn, and then all of the Black Panther snare drums, which are ridiculous. That new line of snare drums, there's not a bad drum in that line, man. Some of them are some of the best snare drums I own, and you know, I got all the classics, Radio Kings and everything, and I mean, it's super strong. It's no BS. Like I don't need to say that it is for any other reason other than it is, to be honest. I mean, it's just killing.
It really does. And what's amazing, talk about this new snare now. What because you got two different sizes. You've got a 14 by 4 or 5/8, and a 14 by 6.5.
Yeah. The Versata snare is that it's been out for a while. I did that with Joe Hibbs back in the day, and that was a 4 5/8 by 14. I wanted the sizes relative to the feel and compression of the drum. So the feel of the drum is very important, that you understand the venting and the material and dimensions together. Those three things sort of create the feel of the drum. If you've ever had a drum that like it just feels great to play, it's because those things are connecting, you know. And it's really difficult, man. It's just not that simple. Like, hey, let's get the best parts and the best wood, we'll put it together, we'll have the best drum. That's not the way it works. If that was the way it worked, everybody'd have the best snare drum ever. We just get the best materials. But it's all these combinations. It's a compound system. This lug on this shell with that thickness and this venting and that edge, you know, with this hoop and all those combinations. And that's why, like with the Black Panther series, there's not, you know, 6 different copper drums, like a 4 and a 5.5 and a 6.5 and an 8, because all of those combinations of that one shell doesn't make the best version of those drums. So we spent the time to go, okay, for this shell, for this material, this venting, these lugs, this thing is what's making this drum really speak and have a voice. And so that's where we started with the Versata stuff. It's got very special snare beds. It's got the size, the way that it's got a different bearing edge on top than the bottom. It's sharper on the bottom to get a better snare sound. And then the articulation of this drum, I mean, listen to this small notes.
Beautiful.
It dries up so quick, right? And it gets so small in the middle, so that the articulation of little ghost notes like that is so crucial. And if you look at this drum, it's kind of the opposite. Like how thick that small note sounds. Right, you can hear the sustain of those notes is different, you know, because of the way that drum's put together. And a lot of people love the original Versata's drum. It did extremely well. And then there was a lot of people asking and talking about, hey, can I get a thicker shell, something that has a bigger, fatter sound to it? So I ended up doing the 6.5.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. So they have
beautiful,
real different voices, and they have a different presence, right? The groove sounds different. It's fatter with this one because it has more sustain in the note. And that's why I'm not big on muffling and stuff, because muffling doesn't allow me to adjust the sustain of the drums to be longer, right? It shortens it and it limits head movement. So it's, you know, it works for certain things and you need it for certain things, but not all the time, you know.
Well, but that's a great point. I'd like you, if you would, you know, the kit sounds fantastic. And what's amazing is the clarity of those snare drums. even on this technology, we're live on Facebook and YouTube, and we've got little computers and what we're doing here.
Yeah,
they still sound fantastic.
That's great, and they translate well, right? They record and translate well. It's super important, and all the drums. I mean, this kick drum. And I have this 18 that I love. It's a great straight ahead kick.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I love the different kick drum sounds and what they do to the feel of the kit. Like for me, the toms sound more open.
Yeah.
When I play the little 18, right? Because it's like the shortness of the kick drum interspersed in those toms. Like I can hear it versus the other one. It sounds like another big tom and just all that stuff.
It also doesn't sound like an 18.
It does not sound like an 18. It's got a lot of bottom end in it.
Do you have anything inside those bass drums?
The 18's wide open, and there's a skin tone on the front, on the batter side, and then the logo head on the front. In the Versatis, it's a P3 Power Stroke 3, which is a pre-muffled head, right?
Right.
And then nothing else in there. And it's just, that's it. But it's still driving, man.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. Really, really fantastic.
Yeah, and that was the thing about the Design Lab kicks. We came up with those rings and the Versatis kicks that stopped all those standing waves and reflections that, so it doesn't sound like a John Philip Sousa marching drum.
Yeah.
Like it, but you can leave it wide open because if you have it really, there's not a lot of muffling on it, then you're able to have a great low dynamic on the bass drum, right? It still sounds like a bass drum.
Yeah.
Where, if you muffle it a whole bunch, then it kind of kills the low dynamic of the drum.
Right.
It sort of sounds like a box until you hit it hard. When you hit it hard, it's great. But anyway, yeah, I'm super happy with them. The Saturn Evolution, same thing, a little different sound. But what's cool about the Evolution is you can combine the hybrid shells to make different kits. Like you can have a maple bass drum and have more attack and presence, and then birch toms, and it's all mixed with walnut. This particular kit is maple mahogany. The mahogany is a softwood, so it gives more bottom end. And then the cherry bomb is all cherry, which is incredible. I love that instrument. I mean, Jeff Hamilton plays a snot out of those drums, and they're just killing. Great vintage sound in the bigger drums, and then the classic 50s jazz thing in the smaller sizes with thinner heads. It's really, it all makes sense.
Well, I think part of it, why it makes sense, is because of the artist that's playing it. You mentioned Jeff Hamilton. I mean, Jeff plays that he just makes sense when you play, you just make such musical sense with all this here. So having the instrument and what you've chosen, if you would, I want you to play a track for me, just something that you have available that you can play for us. I want everyone to hear all of this mixed together.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Jeff. I mean, it's the Indian, not the arrow. That's what Palm always says, right? But I mean, look, once you've got a high level of execution under your hands and your ears, the best instrument possible helps to bring that out. And the key for me is that the instrument has more than I do. That's the key, right? Because if I think what happens is when you play a lower and a less expensive drum set, you start to run into the wall with the instrument quicker. Right. And you start to feel like, hey, I can't get this out of that drum. So I want an instrument that has more than I do. And it allows me this unlimited world where again, it's up to me to execute the sounds out of it. That's super important, right? So getting a high level instrument is important, but at the end of the day, it's still the player and it's still the touch on everything that is part of the sound. It's super important. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. I was thinking what I might do is play, I did this tune for this Chick Corea tribute a while back when Chick passed away. And I had a lot of people that dug it, so I thought I might do that if you're into that. Oh. Yeah. And let me make sure my phone doesn't ring while this happens. I have it on Do Not Disturb, but it rang anyway. Anyway, this is a tune called Freestep. It's from one of the records in the early 90s, and David played drums on it originally. And I changed it up quite a bit. And but it's a cool thing that has cross sticks, and I wanted to dedicate it to you because I don't play open-handed that much, but for this tune I play an open-handed part, right?
Oh, cool.
So
cool.
Okay, here we go.
Beautiful, Russ. Absolutely beautiful. You know, every time I hear you play, the different festivals we've done, the different clinics we've done, I always sit on the sidelines, and I am just amazed at your intense musicality, your incredible control over the instrument, but just your relaxed feel of comfortably expressing yourself and making the music always sound great. Absolutely fantastic.
That's very kind. Thank you. I mean, you know, years ago, I grew up playing a lot of jazz music. I grew up around my grandfather, who was a huge musical experience. He wasn't a musician, but he was a great music enthusiast. So I grew up playing big band music and jazz music a lot before I played rock and roll. And, you know, I remember playing gigs with these groups in Ohio, and one of the sax players at the time said, "Man, if you don't feel good, then I don't feel good, and they don't feel good." And right. So if anything feels jagged or forced or pushed, or I don't know, that it makes the band feel like that, and then it makes the audience feel like that. And I always try. I mean, Gadd is a great example of that, right? Steve Gadd, where his choices are to make something feel good rather than to be exciting or to be drumistically hip or whatever. Yeah. Let's make the right choices in the right order. Right. You know? So if it feels great and it sounds great, then it's cool drumming wise, great, you know, or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's got to feel great and sound great first. It has to work musically. I mean, that's just my approach. I mean, the older I've gotten, the more I've went, man, I don't care about the other thing. I just want it to feel good. But, you know, that's how I paid for myself for the past 40 some years. So
well, it's working. So don't make a change. And that open-handed stuff, Billy Cobham, Simon Phillips, and Will Kennedy, they're loving it.
Come on. All those guys. Come on. Will's a great friend of mine, and I always loved his playing. And you guys are great at that. I mean, I just started messing with that where I could play the groove between the hat, you know, where the foot was playing one of the notes and the hand was playing the other, and I still had the backbeat thing here. And, you know, it actually, to be honest with you, it's easier to make the backbeat feel better matched wide open.
Yeah.
It's harder than doing this. I mean, I have to place it in my brain correctly here, where physically this can help do it. That's why, you know, Simon's got a great feel, and Billy always had a great feel, and Will, great feel. You know, they play different places in time. Like Will plays very on top.
Yeah.
You know, and Simon doesn't, but it's still a great feel of it, you know, with doing that. I like it. And Klaus is killing it too, like one of your guys.
Klaus Hessler, another phenomenal student from Germany, doing great stuff. And I've been doing it now for 20 years.
I know.
And
I remember when you started it.
I'm still a student out of it, but there's so many advantages to it. And it's such a unique feel, and it's opened up so many doors that it's kind of kept me an excited student still learning.
Yeah, I like that I can play those fills a la Simon and still keep the left hand going over there, you know, all that stuff. So I'm just putzing around with it.
I want to squeeze in one more question before we leave here. Russ. This is from a friend of yours, Carlos Gutzman, who's a dear friend of ours.
Oh yeah.
That is a great guy. He's got a question. He said, Russ, what do you consider was the specific gig which became a career-defining achievement that elevated you to the top tier level of first call musicians in the competitive element of Los Angeles? And the second part was also, what career advice would you give to an aspiring drummer that want to achieve that level of recognition?
Okay, well, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I think that there's a lot of elements to that aren't under my control, right? Because I never went to any session and went, oh, this one's going to be like this huge hit song, and I'm going to play on this, and everybody's going to know me from that point forward. You know, really, the hit song thing is just a numbers game, to be honest. It's, unless you're, you know, in one band that's doing like U2 or something that's doing so well, you know that almost everything that comes out is going to be successful. Yeah. You know, it's more like a numbers game. The reason that, you know, you have hit songs is because I did 150 that weren't hit songs. And, you know, and the same thing with movies. It's like, you know, you see big movies that we did, but there was a lot of movies that we did that you didn't see, you know, and so, if you take me coming to LA and starting to do a lot of different stuff, I was playing with the Fifth Dimension and live with the Fifth Dimension, and I was doing all these jazz gigs, and I was starting to play around town with these casual date bands and doing things like that. And then I got the gig with Taste of Honey and, the disco guys and girls, and just started doing that. And then I was doing all these sessions, and then, one of them, Kicks, which is that first Nelly Furtado record, which had I'm Like a Bird on it, which is, this ginormous hit song. So it gets easier because everybody's like, oh, he played on that, right? And then you do other stuff like Moulin Rouge or any of the other things that had hit songs and kicked in, and stuff just starts to happen, and then it becomes a little bit easier. But the thing is, the Hillary Duffs and the Psychedelic Furs and all that, that's rock pop stuff that didn't do much for the movie thing. You still have to have those successes in movie things, and doing big composers and big movies it's a numbers game. You do all these things, and then what happens is someone like Jeff Dana or Michael Dana or one of those guys that I was doing tons of stuff for, they get a huge gig. So we do Chicken Little for Disney, or we do Resident Evils, or we do Onwards for Pixar's, or whatever, and all of a sudden it's like, well, now you've done $1 billion at the box office, and then other composers are cool to hire, they feel confident, or contractors. So it's just a building process. I wish that I could just be in Journey and just do that or something sometimes, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm like, I like playing a lot of different stuff. So I don't know, it just depends. But yeah, that's kind of how it comes together. So again, it goes back to being able to do a lot of different things with a lot of different people, and then those numbers sort of connect. All those little spider webs of connections start to connect, and this guy does this, that, and the other thing. And the big thing to remember though is I get none of those gigs from drummers. Like, they all came from other guys in the band, right? Bass players and keyboard players and sax players. And so back to the thing we were talking about earlier, where those guys got to feel comfortable, and they have to, want to play with you, because, just impressing other drummers, the other drummer's going to take the other gig before he gives it to you, So think that through.
Point well taken. And what would you say, the second part of the question, what would you say to this next generation? Because the industry has changed. It seems like they don't have some of the opportunities that we had.
Yeah.
There were challenges that we had, but they were also equal opportunities that forced us to learn. What would you say to this next generation?
Well, I think your focus determines your reality, right? So I think at the end of the day, you have to be very careful that you're not. It's sort of like the guy who has incredible clinic chops, with all these crazy stuff, and then he wants to play in a blues band. It's like, well, somebody's got to see you play blues music well. You know what I mean? You got your focus. If you're focused on the other thing, that's great. There's no problem with any of that. It's just know that whatever you're focused on and whatever you're showing people and whatever you're doing is going to determine that reality of what happens, right? So it's like, you can't say, I want to be one of the greatest blues drummers in the world and only have videos of yourself playing double bass solos, right? So you have to focus on what you want to do. I wanted to make music. I wanted to create music in the studio. That was my dream. My heroes were Gadd and Jeff Beccaro and J.R. Robinson and Carlos Vega and, all these guys. And I loved the fact that we could go in and everything that we did was captured. It was captured for eternity, and the history of music is in the recording of it, right? And so to be a part of that and have a lineage of hundreds of records and movies and TV shows like that, that's what you're leaving behind, to have done all those things. That was my focus. So just, if you're presenting yourself, make sure that it's presenting what you want everyone to see, and at the highest level possible. I'm not big on like, hey, this is what I was practicing today, look how crappy I play it. I'm not sure about that whole thing. It's just, it's important that you present yourself in a way that makes sense for what you want to do in the long run. I think that's the key to it.
Well, I think that clearly sums it up for sure. It's amazing, Russ. We could spend easily many more hours of these kinds of conversations and tap into certain areas, which I think we'll do in the future. We'll take anytime. Maybe we'll do one session on just influential players that have been in your life, like people like Max Roach and Elvin, and just start to focus on them. That might be an interesting session because
absolutely.
You sound fantastic. The drums sound great. It's and Carlos, thank you so much for your question.
Yep.
Russ, I know tonight you're going to be on Filling in the Grooves with Jim Toscano at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
I am, yes.
I want everyone to tune back in again because I'm sure Russ will be going on to a variety of other different things. Russ, thank you so much on behalf of Mapex All Access.
Oh, man, thanks for having me back. Mapex is my family, and, anytime you want to do anything dumb, I'm in on it, so.
And believe me, I'm holding you to that for sure. So
I don't know about mixing 200 drummers again, but we'll talk about that.
We went out of our minds. If everyone goes to type in "Why Hunger Drum Together" on YouTube and watch that video, out of the crazy mind of Russ Miller came the organization of all these different sounds that you hear. It's really, really fantastic. Russ, thank you so much. Stay well. My best to you and your family. I look forward to seeing you soon. And hopefully, even if it's at NAMM in June or whatever, if not sooner.
Yep. And thanks to Harold for helping me. He's been switching the cameras for everybody. So.
Harold, you've been great, man. You gave us some great shots, man. Thanks so much for all the help. Thank you. Right. We'll touch base real soon.
All right. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.